Commanders hire Dan Quinn to match with their new general manager, Adam Peters, to lead this franchise into the future.
The way that we live is not for everybody, okay? It's not, all right? Because we're going to run and put our bodies on people in a violent manner.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So today is Tell the Truth Monday, and that's exactly what we're going to do here on Commanders Nightly News. First things first, the Commanders release kicker Cade York. Good riddance. We talked about it yesterday. And I don't know how true this is, and maybe this is why they acted so expeditiously, but rumor has it that they had to make a decision on Cade York by week 2. And if he was on the roster past week 2, then the 7th round pick would officially transfer over to the Cleveland Browns, and we would not be able to get it back no matter what happened with Cade York. I don't know if there's any validity to that or not. There was obviously a condition that needed to be met in order for the Browns to receive that 7th round pick. Whatever the case may be, Cade York clearly was not the answer in week 1. And I've seen kickers derail entire seasons. I've watched that happen with my own eyes. I'm not telling you that this is going to be a 9, 10, 11 win season and kicker is the route to that happening. And it's paramount that we have a kicker because that's how we're going to win these games. But I'm telling you, if we're going to win some games, we're going to need our kicking situation to be resolved. And clearly, Cade York was not it yesterday. I saw a kicker that looked like he wanted no parts of, being in those situations. He looked like he was nervous and he was vomiting in his mouth when his number was being called to go out on the field. He kicked the ball off out of bounds. That's what cinched it for me. Look, you're going to miss kicks. One of them was from like 55, 56. He's got the leg. He just didn't have the accuracy. Shit used to happen with Joey Sly last year where we'd send him out there for a long kick. He'd have the length, but not the accuracy. It happens. All right. The first kick he missed is unacceptable. That one was, I'm not saying chip shot field goal range, but I call that the money distance from 40 to 49. That's where the bulk of your kicks are going to come from as an NFL kicker. You better make those kicks. And he missed. And it killed momentum early in the game when we were trying to hang tough and provide a threat to Tampa Bay. And it allowed them to have momentum. And as I talked about, when you miss kicks, it's a double whammy. It's not only the fact that you just took points off the scoreboard and you killed any momentum that the team built by having a positive drive and not capping it off with some sort of reward in points. You also give away excellent field position, no matter where the kick is from, unless you're kicking a 22-yard field goal or a 27-yard field goal and you happen to miss. But that's not usually what happens in this league. You're usually kicking a 42-yard field goal, a 47-yard field goal, a 51-yard field goal. You miss that, and the other team is going to have great starting field position. So you not only hurt us twice in that department, then you had the audacity on the one made field goal that you had to then kick the ball out of bounds, or I think that might have come after the touchdown, the first touchdown scored. Then you had the audacity to kick the ball out of bounds and allow the Bucs to start at their 40-yard line. You got to be kidding me. So Cade York clearly was not the answer here. And you know what I love about that decision? Again, I don't know if it was made because of the situation, and maybe it was, but this group just strikes me as one that's not going to sit on their hands and wait to make a decision like the last group would. Let this thing fester and let them lose another 2 or 3 games for you, or at least contribute to losing a couple of games before they make a decision. This group said, no, this isn't good enough. This is not what we stand for. And we're not going to take the hard work of 52 other guys and throw it down the drain because one guy can't do his job adequately. And so they moved on from the kicker. I love the decision. I told you I would have packed his things and left him on the tarmac yesterday. He was awful. So now we search the streets once again. This will be like the 6th or 7th kicker we've had since the end of last season. And this is what happens when you don't have the kicker position solidified. Damn you, Brandon McManus. Anyway, let's talk about my keys to victory, and let's tell the truth. It's Monday, so what else is there to do? So I had 4 keys to the game offensively and defensively. I think the first offensive key is some microcosm of the way the day went yesterday. And I knew it was important, which is why I had it be the first thing that I wanted to talk about on Friday's show. The first offensive key to victory for Washington versus Tampa Bay was protect the Duke and avoid self-inflicted wounds. The biggest thing there was, and what that encapsulated was, we're not good enough to go on the road and beat a playoff team from a season ago while making mistakes. We're not there yet. Okay, the Philadelphia Eagles can turn it over 3 times against a playoff team from a season ago and still win because they're good enough to do that. We are not. Okay? So we have to protect the football, which we did. Okay? And we can't have 7 penalties, 3 of which extend drives, which turn into scoring opportunities for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're not good enough to do that. We're not good enough to blow coverages. We're not good enough to miss field goals. We're not good enough to kick the football out of bounds. We're not good enough to miss a deep shot that would have been a walk-in touchdown. We're not good enough to miss these opportunities. We're not good enough to have self-inflicted wounds. We're not good enough to make those mistakes or not capitalize on opportunities. We're not good enough to drop an interception and still win against a team that's better than us. We're not. And so I knew that going in, and that's why that was first on the list. And obviously, we had a lot of self-inflicted wounds yesterday, and hence the Buccaneers put up 37 points in the ball game. So obviously, we get no points for that. Handle the pressure in adversity. I gave us a half point here, okay, because I thought they handled the pressure okay. Like, I didn't feel like we were overwhelmed by Tampa Bay's pressure looks. And I thought for the most part we handled the adversity. Look, we started this game with a missed field goal and a penalty on a third down on the opening possession by Tampa and a dropped interception on that same possession that could have really, swung things in our favor. And we gave up a field goal. All right. We were down 13-0 because of some of the mistakes that we made, right? And we fought and we kept this thing respectable. This was a 13-7 halftime score. We were right in this game, right? Or 16-7, I believe, at halftime. But we were right in this game and we gave ourselves a chance. And even when it got to 19-7, we still fought and gave ourselves a chance and had an opportunity. We scored the touchdown and kicked the extra point, down 9. Could have been, 8 if he'd have gone for 2, but that's nor here nor there. A lot of people keep harping on that, but you had to get close enough to be within striking distance. I get it. Like, I'm not overly critical of him not going for 2 there. A lot of people keep harping on that, but like he said, that was in the third quarter. There were still 3, maybe even 4 possessions if we could get a damn stop defensively in the ball game. Like, you don't have to go chasing points in the third quarter. I'm a big proponent of you don't need to chase points early in the game. Some teams are going for 2 any and everywhere. First, second, third, fourth quarter, doesn't matter. We're not there yet. When you become a team that is capable of overcoming a missed 2-point conversion at any point in the game, you can do that. We're not there yet. So I'm very, very cautious as to when I go for 2 right now with the way this team is set up. So I didn't blame him for not going for 2 there. And hopefully he doesn't allow people being critical of him to factor into his decision-making moving forward. If he thought that was the right way to handle the situation, continue to do that. Because if you don't get it, now it's 19-9. And instead of being in a position where you could steal this game 20-19, if the Bucs don't score again in the game and you score a touchdown and you kick a field goal, you're walking it off instead of kicking a field goal to tie the game, right? If you miss the 2-point conversion. So I don't like the idea of chasing points early in the game. Fourth quarter, and the amount of possessions are limited at that point. Yeah, you have to chase the points at that point, but we weren't there yet. When it was 30-14, that's when you have to chase points. You're in the fourth quarter, you're down 2 scores, you're down 16. There aren't as many possessions left. Had we scored a touchdown, and I kept telling the mob at the time, we're 1 touchdown and 2-point conversion away from this thing being an 8-point ball game and literally a 1-possession game. But it never got there, obviously. never got to that point because we couldn't get a damn defensive stop. And we couldn't move it ourselves. We were down 30-14 with the football, and we went 3 and out, punted, and we pinned them. And next thing you know, they ripped off a couple of big runs, and that was that. They ended up scoring a touchdown. So I gave us a half point because I thought we handled the adversity and the pressure early. I didn't think we necessarily handled the adversity late, right? And the adversity was the heat. That was the adversity. It wasn't the Buccaneers necessarily as much as it was the elements. It was hot. This is the first time these guys, and Dan Quinn talked about that at his press conference today. So we'll talk about that when we get to In Other News. Establish the run or some sort of extension of the run game. I was really disappointed in this one here because while I thought there were some solid hits in the run game, Eckler had some good hits. Robinson had 1 or 2 good hits, but for by and large, the Buccaneers did a good job of shutting down the run game and making it a non-factor with the running backs. Obviously, Jaden Daniels made our rushing totals look a lot better than what they really actually were, with his 16 carries for 88 yards. But I was disappointed with the quick game. But here on Tell the Truth Monday, I'm here to tell you that Cliff Kingsbury was in his bag, and there were guys running wide open all over the field. And whether it was the offensive line not giving Jaden enough time, which we'll talk about here in a bit, or Jaden just not being willing to pull the trigger. He was unwilling at times to pull the trigger. And you know, I think there's this notion that guys just come in and need to be ready. And you have to understand that there's a rewiring of the brain that needs to take place from the college game to the NFL. Players are faster, guys are smarter, defensive coordinators are more complex. So the looks that you see are different, and you have to trust your eyes. And sometimes it's hard to do that. In college, when you're playing South Louisiana State, when you're playing Fresno State, when you're playing, you know, TCU, there are massive amounts of space between your receiver that's a 5-star and that corner who's a 2 or 3-star. Your guys created 3 yards of separation. It's an easy throw. There's a massive window there. In the NFL, there are rarely massive windows. You're going to have to stick that football in there, and you're going to have to make some tight window throws. And a half of step is open in the NFL. And there were times where you could tell he was unwilling to cut it loose because he felt like he was about to put the ball in harm's way. And I'm like, no, Jaden, that's open here in the NFL. This isn't college anymore. You got to throw that football, my man. If you see your receiver running full speed and a guy hasn't even gotten out of his back pedal yet, that's open because your guy, you're anticipating your guy's going to run right by him. Let it go like he did with Terry. You know, caught that corner, Jamel Dean, flat-footed. Terry got even and left him. Cut it loose. He did. You just threw it too far. We had the same look on the opposite side with Luke McCaffrey. Cut it loose. Had another opportunity on a wheel route up the sideline with Austin Eckler, one-on-one with a linebacker, and Eckler smokes him. Cut it loose. He had time. Throw the football. There were opportunities on certain plays, and if you're a member of the mob, you'll see what I'm talking about when we get to the film breakdown. But that's a part of the growing pains of having a young quarterback. But Cliff had guys open. The quick game was there, and Jaden just turned it down at times. And sometimes it was because there was immediate pressure. And so here on Tell the Truth Monday, I want to debunk a couple of false narratives that I was a part of creating yesterday, and that some of you out there may have created for yourself. One, Cliff Kingsbury did a really good job yesterday. So I want to nip that in the butt right now. I was pleased with what I saw when I went back and watched film. That's number one. Two, I thought the offensive line did a really good job, a solid job. I wouldn't call it a really good job. I don't think I ever I they were really good. I didn't feel like they were a major issue. Upon further review, especially early in the game, yeah, there were issues up front. And I'd tell you right now, our biggest weakness on the offensive line, and it's not a surprise to any of you who paid attention last year, it's Andrew Wiley. He was getting beat like a drum early in the game. When Jaden was taking off and running, a lot of times it was because Yaya Diaby just beat him. Somebody just beat him inside, and Jaden felt the pressure. And it's hard to tell a young quarterback who on his second and third throws of the game, or second and third dropbacks of the game, and there's immediate pressure off your right side because your right tackle gets beat immediately, hey, hang in there and read the field and throw the football. It's hard to tell a young guy in his first career NFL start, after he's been pressured on his second and third drop back immediately off the right side, hey, don't worry about the pressure. Just look down the field and deliver the football. It's a tough ask of a young quarterback. Andrew Wiley's got to be better than that shit, man. And it wasn't just him. I don't want to just single him out because everybody took turns getting beat. Allegretti gave up a pressure. Cosme didn't give up any real pressures as much as he was helping somebody, and then a guy came late and Cosme got to him late, and now Jaden's feeling a little bit more pressure than he should, right? There was a lot of miscommunication up front with the offensive line. You could tell this was a group that did not work together consistently throughout the summer because of various reasons. There wasn't a lot of Brandon Coleman in this game, but when he was in there, I like what I saw. He did give up a pressure on a delayed, pressure by the Bucs, where he's just kind of blocking nobody and he doesn't get to the guy in time enough, and he's able to apply pressure to Jaden. And so it's just little things like that. The lack of communication between the guys up front, that'll get better as time progresses. At some point, I think they need to pull the Band-Aid off of Brandon Coleman, to be honest with you. I get it. He's working his way back from an injury. You don't want to just throw him out there. That's kind of how they have been with a lot of these rookies is, hey, we want to make sure that you've gotten the proper reps. And because Coleman didn't get those reps in the preseason, in camp, this is his opportunity now to get those reps and get his feet wet. And so they're going to continue to do that. At some point, I need you to rip the Band-Aid off and give. And I thought Cornelius Lucas was just fine as a pass protector in this game. I had no issues with him, but I know what Cornelius Lucas is. He's not the left tackle of the future. And at some point, and they will at some point rip the Band-Aid off and throw Brandon Coleman out there and just let's see what he's got. But ultimately, I thought that this was an uneven performance by the offensive line. But saying that, there was enough protection up front for Jaden to have a better day than he did. And I'll say that as well. So, no points for establishing the run or some sort of extension of the run game, although Jaden helped a lot with that. The quick game wasn't effective enough. And that a lot of that largely in part to Jaden's unwillingness to cut it loose. And then you couple that with the offensive line giving up some quick pressures at times as well. Finish drives with points, but primarily touchdowns. Obviously, we don't get any points here either because you had 2 missed field goals. You missed an opportunity on a deep ball to Terry. And so you had opportunities that you just flat out missed to put points on the scoreboard, and you just can't do that against teams that are better than you. I mean, it's going to be hard to beat teams that aren't better than you doing that, but you stand a better chance. You can't go on the road against a team like Tampa Bay and expect to beat them missing scoring opportunities. You just can't do it. Can't do it. Defensive keys. Let me we'll get to that. Defensive keys. First thing was stop the run. Half of point here. I thought that we were really good for much of the day. This felt like, if I give you an analogy, it'd be like, this is a student at school who has been excellent on all of the classwork assignments, all of the quizzes, all the homework assignments. I mean, he's across the board, he's killing it, or she's killing it. But then it comes test time and they get a 75, and you're like, and it's going to pull their grade down, right? Because while the homework and the quizzes and the classwork, it's all nice, it's not worth as much as the test. And while we held Rashad White to 15 carries, 31 yards, I mean, he was essentially a non-factor. And we had 8 tackles for losses in the game. We let their backup running back, their 3rd round pick, Bucky Irving out of Oregon, get us for 7 carries for like 62 yards or something like that. And they were just really 2 big runs in there, right? But they happened, and those count, and those pull your average down, or in the case of the analogy, that pulls your grade down when you get that 75 on the test. It was a really good performance by the run defense, but then they ran out of gas, is what I think. They ran out of fuel. It was hot. And Dan Quinn talked about them having to push through that. And we'll talk more about that when we get to DQ, but I gave them a half a point for stopping the run. I was largely pleased with the run game defense. I was largely pleased with that throughout the day. Next defensive key was harass and disrupt Baker Mayfield. Take away his first read. Obviously, if I could give us negative points here, I would. I mean, we really didn't harass and disrupt him nearly enough. I thought early in the game we did, but we didn't get him on the ground. And it's one thing to harass and disrupt. It's another thing to get him on the ground. And if you're going to harass and disrupt him, you have to keep him in the pocket. That's when harassing and disrupting someone is fruitful. When they can't escape, scramble, extend either with their legs or to throw and make something happen. That's when harassing someone is beneficial. But to disrupt someone but still allow them to break, contain, get out of the pocket, and have the ability to either run or throw it, you did half the job, and it's not good enough. So they were able to harass Baker and disrupt him, but they weren't able to keep him in the pocket. So all of that was for naught. All of that was for naught. And a lot of times he didn't have to look elsewhere. The first read was open. If they called a play to go to Mike Evans, they went to Mike Evans. If it was 3rd down and 6 and they wanted to go to Chris Godwin on a speed cut, they went to Chris Godwin on a speed cut. They wanted to go to Chris Godwin on a stop, they went to Chris Godwin on a stop. Whatever it was they wanted, and that was the primary read in the first look, that's where Baker went 90% of the time on Sunday. And that's just not good enough. Limit the explosives. Make them earn it was the next key to the game. There weren't a lot of explosives by the Buccaneers. Maybe 1 or 2 in the game. If you factor in the runs, maybe 3 or 4 explosives. But they weren't back-breaking explosives. I lied. There's a 5th one, that wide receiver screen on 3rd and 17. That was a backbreaker for sure, because any hope that I had of us, making this making the Bucs strain to finish was dashed on that 3rd and 17 being converted on the wide receiver screen. You gave up the 2 runs that were over 20 yards. You gave up the wide receiver screen that was over 20 yards. I'm not sure if the Mike Evans first touchdown was over 20 yards. It felt like it was over 20 yards, but it might not have been. And then obviously the last touchdown on the corner route on the busted coverage to the rookie wide receiver can't happen, did happen. And that was a big explosive, probably the biggest play we gave up all day. And that was disgusting. The pass interference by Emmanuel Forbes was an explosive play, even though it wasn't an actual completion, but it served its purpose. Big play, put them in a scoring range, and they took advantage. So I'd say that, and I think I said that was the last touchdown. The corner route wasn't the last touchdown. The Mike Evans touchdown, second of the day, was the last one to make it 37. But all in all, it felt in the moment like we had done a good enough job limiting. But now as I'm playing the game back in my head, I'd given us a half a point here. I want my half a point back, because if you couple in the pass interference, the wide receiver screen, the 2 runs, the Evans touchdown, the first one, and the corner route touchdown on the busted coverage, that's about 6 explosives. How many did we have? Conversely, maybe 2. The Jaden run down the sidelines where he's tiptoeing, the Austin Eckler check down that he turns into like a 25, 30-yard gain. I think that's it. The Brian Robinson catch and broke 2 tackles down to the 1-yard line. So I think about 3 for us. but there were more opportunities. Like Cliff, I told you he was in his bag. That double pass to Luke McCaffrey, shit's wide open. I mean, I don't really know what else you want Cliff to do there. I mean, you want him to throw the ball too? He was a former quarterback. Do you want Cliff to throw it too? Clearly, Luke doesn't want to throw, and that was a funny moment for me because I haven't watched the play, and I was asking myself, what the hell's going on here? Why didn't Luke cut it loose? And Dan said, well, clearly, or DQ clearly, he said clearly Luke doesn't want to play quarterback because the guy was open and he just didn't throw it. And I'm like, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't tripping. So Cliff was in his bag. There were opportunities, and we didn't take advantage. And so I want my half a point back here. Limit the explosives. We didn't do a good enough job. When you start to tally them up, we didn't do a good enough job. And then take it away. Ball is life. Like I said, at some point, we're not on life support. We're just dead. Okay. I mean, we're still on life support. It's early in the season, but at some point, if this doesn't change and we continue to be a team that isn't even looking to get the ball out, we're not looking to punch it out, we're not looking to rip it out, at some point, you have to then say that we're not a turnover forcing team. And you may have to draft those players. Those guys may not be here yet, because that's a mentality to me. I don't know if you can coach that. I think that's something that's inherent, right? It's innate in a player that looked like Josh Norman looked to get the football out. Like that's his mindset. I see the ball loosey goosey. I think I got a chance to punch this thing out and I'm going to take my shot. Like that's a mindset to punch the ball out. Like Darius Leonard used to do that with the Colts all the time. See the football, see a guy not paying attention, boom, I'm gonna go try to punch that thing. We don't do that. Cleveland Farrell had a sack on Baker Mayfield where Baker didn't even see him. From the backside, Baker's trying to escape. He's looping around the backside, and I'm like, yo, get that puppy out of there. And he's just happy to get to the quarterback. And it takes a different type of player, wired mentally, to say, it ain't just good enough to get there. I need the football. And I just don't know if we have guys that are wired that way. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, like, for instance, Benjamin St. Juste, he's happy with a pass breakup. He's never been a takeaway guy. He's never been a guy that took the football away. Not in college, not in the NFL. So I think he's cool with doing this shit after a pass breakup instead of taking it away and running towards the end zone with the football in his hand. And again, it's just a mindset. I don't know if we got dudes that are hungry for the turnover. That like, I'm not okay with just a PBU if I got a chance to get two hands on the ball and take it away. I think we have a lot of guys that are just happy with, hey, let's force a punt. And while that's cool, you know what that punt means? The field position is going to be flipped. He's going to kick that ball 47 yards. It's going to be fair caught. And now we're at our own 23-yard line versus picking it off. And now we're starting in plus territory at the opposition's 39-yard line, right? Like there's a massive difference between a PBU, forcing a punt, and a takeaway. And I just don't know if we're wired to go after it. You can try and coach it all you want, but a guy's got to be wired a certain way to say, I'm going to get the football. And I don't know if we're wired that way or not. But clearly, the ball is not life here in Washington. It's a figment of our imagination on defense. So of all of those keys, 8 total, we have 1 point. One whole entire point. A half on offense for handling the pressure and the adversity, and a half on defense on stopping the run. That's loser football. That is loser football. But to go back and we're going to tell some more truth here on Tell the Truth Monday. Defensively, it was what we thought it was. I'm encouraged, and I put out a video, earlier. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, go ahead. I don't want to, belabor the same points because I put out a video earlier with my, day after reactions. And one of the things I talked about in that video is what I saw defensively. And so if you're looking for a thorough examination of what I saw and how I feel the day after having really consumed the game, looking for specifics, go to that video. But I'll just tell you, I'm encouraged defensively, but there are limitations that I don't know if we'll be able to overcome or not this season. I'll just say that. But I am encouraged. I saw some things that I think we can build upon. And some of the things I just expected to just get better over time, because with more reps, it will get better. Tackling will get better over time. Communication in the secondary will get better over time with just more reps. A lot of the errors I saw defensively are correctable mistakes, which is encouraging, because some of the things you just like, Benjamin St-Juste just isn't good enough to defend Mike Evans. Like, that's a physical limitation. That has nothing to do with scheme. That has nothing to do with lack of communication. He's just not good enough to stop Mike Evans, and that's okay. That's who Benjamin St-Juste is. And Mike Evans is one of the best receivers in football. That's okay. Right? We don't have a guy that can take away that type of receiver on this roster. We don't. We know that. That's a limitation that we're going to have to try to overcome by getting pressure on the quarterback, by getting the opposition in third and long situations so that they're not able to complete 6-7 yard passes, right? Mike Samer still isn't ready to deal with a slot receiver like Chris Godwin. He's not ready yet. Maybe 8 weeks from now, he might be, right? But he's not ready right now in week 1, and that's okay. But physically, I think he can get that done, and he will eventually. But he wasn't ready in week 1. And again, that's okay. So when it's all said and done, I wasn't as disappointed watching it back. And that's usually how I feel. I was really disappointed, though, in just the fact that we didn't give ourselves a chance. Because for as prepared as they told us they were, it didn't seem like it. And even Dan Quinn said after the game, and he said it again during the presser, he was really disappointed because they had prepared so well and they thought they were ready. And then to see some of the mistakes, like on his end, we burned 3 timeouts, 2 in the first half, 1 in the second half, just off of not having the right personnel, on the field, not being able to get lined up. Those are things that's coaching, because clearly the players weren't prepared, right? Or you didn't get the personnel on the field in time. That's how the 12 guys on the field penalty happened, right? Like, these are infractions that can't take place. These are things that I'm big on second half. You want to waste first half timeouts? I don't love it, because there was a chance there at the end. The Bucs essentially wasted the end of the first half and kicked a field goal, and we could do nothing about it because we didn't have but 1 timeout. Had we had all 3 of our timeouts, we could have pressed the issue and we could have forced the Bucs to make a decision. Either you're going to go for this touchdown or you're going to settle for a field goal, but you're not going to bleed the clock and say we're going to walk this off with a field goal. So we would have forced them to be aggressive and do something. But you only had 1 timeout, so you couldn't make them do anything. They had control of how the half was going to end. But I don't trip about that as much. Second half, when we're the type of team that we're not going to blow many teams out. We're going to win games, or we're going to try to come back in a game. We're going to need all 3 of our second half timeouts. You can't use them because we can't get personnel on the field, right? Or we can't get lined up. It's 3rd and 1. It's 4th and 1. And you can't get lined up correctly. So now you have a procedure penalty, and you go from 4th and 1, Jaden Daniels converts, to now 4th and 6, and you have to punt. That's coaching. That's coaching. So there were errors and enough blame to go around. And if it's Tell the Truth Monday, everybody has to be better. And they will. And I like the accountability with this group. Unlike the last group that was willing to point fingers and place blame on everybody but themselves, this group takes accountability and they hold everyone accountable, including themselves. Joe Witt Jr. told us when Emmanuel Forbes got cooked, I put him in that position. That's my fault. I want to hear that. Because if you know he's not capable and you put him in that position anyway, that's on you as a staff. So I like the accountability. This is why I told you, it is different. It feels different because it is different because this staff, they're not going to sit on their hands and wait. There's an expectation. And Dan Quinn, matter of fact, let's get to in other news. Dan Quinn had a presser today, day after presser. And I want to dive into that. But before we do that, let's get into the snap counts. That's something that I told you I was eager to take a look at after this game to see exactly who did or didn't play. Let's take a look at the snap counts. So first thing I was looking for was Dyami Brown because I made a big stink about this yesterday. And as you can see, Dyami Brown was had the third most receiver snaps of any of the wideouts with 33 snaps, which was good enough for 56%. As you can see, the offensive lineman played, and Jaden Daniels played 100% of the snaps. So we had 59 total offensive snaps in the game, right? So Dyami Brown played in 33 of those 59 snaps. He just didn't get targeted at all. So I think that's something that has to change next week. You can't tell me that Dyami Brown can't get a target or two or three during the course of the game. That just can't happen. If you're going to throw a wide receiver screen, and I know you want to get guys like Jamison Crowder involved, that's cool, but why not throw that to Dyami Brown? He's faster than Jamison Crowder, right? You got to take the Bucs were limited in their secondary. You got to take at least 3 or 4 shots with a banged up secondary. You got to take advantage of that. You got to. I don't care if you got to max protect to take these shots. You got to do whatever you got to do. But you got to isolate their corner and take a shot. And there were opportunities in this game, by the way. So that was the first thing that stuck out to me. You look at Brandon Coleman. He only played 14 snaps. And that was apparent when I went back and watched. Cornelius Lucas started the game. There was a small, brief window where Coleman was in, but for the most part, it was the Cornelius Lucas show at left tackle in this game. And so they're gonna stay true to form. They told us we're gonna work him in. We're not gonna rush the process, and clearly that is what they're doing because Cornelius Lucas played 45 of the 59 offensive snaps at the tackle position. Ben Sinnott only played 13 snaps. I thought he'd play more and have a bigger role as a H-back. And I think you'll see that number increase as the season wears on and as we play against teams that we can run the football against a little bit better. And also, we're playing with a lead. I think you see the snap counts for John Bates and Ben Sinnott kind of go up. But when you're playing from a deficit like we were the entire game, we were never any closer than I think 13-7 was as close as we got in the game, 6-point deficit. So because you were always playing from behind, you're not allowed to run the football. And you weren't going to run it that well against Tampa Bay anyway. So that was something that I wanted to take a look at. But by and large, Terry played 81% of the snaps. He can't have 4 targets, and he played 81% of the snaps. That's not okay. In any way, shape, or form, on any alternate universe, Terry McLaurin can't play 81% of the snaps and only have 4 targets and 2 catches. Not okay. And I don't think that's going to continue moving forward. I expect this to be a staff that self-scouts on a weekly basis and understands, hey, we got to do a better job of getting our best player of the football. And they will. I wouldn't be shocked. And I told you, and I'm always upfront with you guys. I wouldn't be shocked to see Terry be targeted the very first play of the game, even if it's a slot screen or something. I wouldn't be shocked if it's a screen to Terry just to get him the football and a touch to kick the game off, right, against the Giants. You see Eckler and Robinson have almost equal number of snaps. I like that. Eckler's really good as a pass protector. I was really pleased with what he was doing as a protector back there. So, there was a confusion on a sack that the one where Jaden fumbled. Eckler, I think, should have stayed at home in the A gap, and he went to go help when I don't think his help was required over around that B gap, C gap area. But by and large, Eckler was outstanding as a pass protector. And like I told you, and I said this on the Bleacher Report video that I put out earlier, these running backs are going to be really good for us this year. And Jaden's going to he's in good hands with those two guys. Olamide Zaccheaus didn't play as much as I thought he would in the game, only 26 snaps, 44%. So a little surprising there, but it doesn't knock my socks off. And at some point, I think you're going to see Noah Brown be added into the mix here. And it's going to take a little while, but at some point you're going to see him added into the mix. You go to the defensive side. Bobby Wagner, at his old age, played 100% of the snaps. So for all of you out there who said Bobby Wagner looked old, and I'm guilty of this. I told you I perpetuated some false narratives yesterday, and one of those was Wagner looked old. No, Wagner looked tired. Okay. And when I went back and watched, I said Bobby was gassed. He didn't play in the preseason at all. It's hot, and it's the first game of the season. Bobby was gassed. That's what he was. An old man ain't playing 100% of the snaps. Okay? I mean, he did. And is he the same explosive Bobby Wagner from 5 years? No, but we knew that. And he's still 10 times better than anything we've had at the middle linebacker position. He had 2 back-to-back tackles for loss to set up a 3rd and 17 that we blew on a 24-yard wide receiver screen to Chris Godwin. But him and St. Juice were the only defensive players to play all 64 defensive snaps. Samer still played 95%, which is not surprising. I told you, he might be one of the most important pieces defensively for us, and he's only going to get better. Quan Martin played 59 snaps, which equals out to 92%. Same with Frankie Louvu. And I think Louvu's number only was 92 because he got hurt. He probably would have played either 100% or, 96, 97%. Jeremy Chin was out there for 80% of the snaps. You get to the defensive line, and while I like these numbers, I was not comfortable with how often I saw Sheldon Day in the game. The first possession of the game, we're probably 5-6 snaps in, and I'm seeing a combination of Mathis and Sheldon Day in the game. And I remember very specifically hearing Joe Witt Jr. say, I want to keep one of those two, Payne and Allen, or Allen, in the game at all times, if I can. So to come out and be 5-6 plays in, and you got Sheldon Day and Fedarian Mathis and Javonte John Baptiste all in the game at the same time, I almost shit myself. That said, Javonte John Baptiste did get a pressure in the game. Almost got to Baker Mayfield, but as we all know, almost doesn't count. Almost doesn't count. And he actually completed a pass on that play when he was wrapped up, and it ended up being like a 6-7 yard gain. But Payne and Allen, I love to see those numbers down in the 60s where it belongs. I just need them to stagger their, them being in the game. If I want both of them in at the same time if we can. And you know what? It'll be less noticeable when we get Johnny Newton back, right? Because then even if Payne and or Allen aren't in the game, you still have Johnny Newton in the game. So there's still a guy that can be a havoc wreaker inside, still in the game. But even saying that, Sheldon Day was and Mathis, those guys were in the backfield. They just didn't make any plays. You know what I'm saying? Cleveland Farrell and Dorrance Armstrong both played roughly 55 and 58% of the snaps, respectively. Forbes played 55% of the snaps. We'll see if that number goes down next week. I think it will. Noah Igbenogany, a lot of those Noah Igbenogany snaps came in the second half when Forbes was essentially benched. So we'll see if that translates to next week or if that was just a in-game benching. Let's get back to the drawing board, and then Forbes gets back out there, which is what I think ultimately will happen against the Giants, but we'll see. Percy Butler had a tackle for loss. He played 39% of the snaps. Dante Fowler Jr. played 33% of the snaps. I think that's the number for him, somewhere in that 30 to 35 range of snaps. That's going to keep him fresh and active for us. Jamin Davis, I think you're going to see an uptick in his snaps. I thought he did the most with his 13 snaps in the game, 20%. So that was good to see there. So those are the snap counts from the game. De'Ami Brown played a lot more than I thought. So he's got to get the football, man. There's no excuse for him not to get targeted. Same with Terry McLaurin. We got to get these guys more opportunities. But let's get to DQ's presser from today. He talked about Tell the Truth Mondays, and he talked about the importance of them. He said, doesn't matter if we win or we lose, Tell the Truth Monday is among the most important days of the week for the team because no matter if we won or lost the game, we have to detach ourselves from the emotion of either victory or defeat. And we got to be able to sit down and correct the mistakes that were made. And so Tell the Truth Monday is imperative, he said. And he said there are 5 things that they focus in on Tell the Truth Monday. Those 5 things are turnover margin, penalty margin, field position margin. He said explosive plays and penalty margin, right? So turnover margin, penalty margin, tackling, that was it. Penalty margin, tackling margin, turnover margin, field position, and explosive plays. So those 5 things, once again, tackling margin, turnover margin, all right, penalty margin, turnover margin, tackling margin, explosive plays, and field position. And I think we probably lost in all 5 of those phases, if that's what he was focusing in on. We didn't tackle well. The Bucs didn't tackle great either, just so we're clear. But we were way worse than they were, okay? We were a lot worse than they were. So we lost the tackling margin. Neither team turned the ball over, so there was no turnover margin there. But we needed to create turnovers, and we had a chance, and we didn't, right? So we didn't win the turnover margin. We didn't win the penalty margin. Each team had 7 penalties. We had more penalty yardage than they did. We had 7 for 51. They had 7 for 46. So we didn't win that margin. And that's too many penalties. All right, that's too many penalties. And when they came, made it even worse, right? So you didn't win the turnover margin. You didn't win the tackling margin. You didn't win the penalty margin. Field position was skewed heavily in the favor of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We had a kickoff out of bounds that started them at the 40. I think we had a missed field goal that started them at the 38, 39-yard line. Now, when we kicked it in the field of play, when we kicked off, we did a really good job of covering those kicks, and they didn't get back to the 30. But by and large, they had better starting field position than we did. We pinned them deep one time on a punt, and then they had the 2 explosive runs to get them out past midfield and ultimately led to a scoring opportunity to put the game away. But they won the field position battle. And then the explosive plays, we talked about that already. Just not good enough on our end. We didn't have enough, and they had too many, right? Whether it was via penalty or a run, a throw, poor tackling that led to an explosive, you name it, we did it in a game, and it just wasn't good enough. It was not good enough. So he said those are the things they talk about, and he said it is imperative that we do it. That's the only way we're going to get better. So he talked about the defensive line and the offensive line, and he said he was really pleased with. And I said this already, and I said that on the Bleacher Report video, and so go check that out as well. But I said I was pleased with the defensive performance up front in terms of the amount of pressure they applied, not only to Baker Mayfield, but in the run game. They were outstanding in attacking the line of scrimmage. You just got to get guys down. And he said that was the part that was most disappointing is, being aggressive, attacking the line, that's half the battle. You still got to get guys on the ground. And we did that in the run game, hence the 8 tackles for loss. but we didn't do it in the pass game to Baker Mayfield, and that was really frustrating. Offensive line wise, it was solid. They gave Jaden enough time on most snaps to do what he needed to do, but he wasn't comfortable back there. And it's hard to get comfortable when there were early pressures, and in the game it was often there were pressures early and often in the first quarter, first half. I thought they settled in a lot better in the second half, but in the first half I felt like he was having to vacate the pocket way too quickly, and it forced him to speed up his clock in the second half. And as the game progressed, it forced him to not be as comfortable as he probably should have been. Right? He'll settle in though. Wiley wasn't great. Allegretti got beat a couple times, and I just thought there wasn't that cohesiveness you're looking for. But that'll come as time progresses and they play together, which is why I'm advocating for them to get Brandon Coleman in there as soon as possible, so you can just get 5 guys that are your starters and just have them to work together, them get the reps together, and start to build that cohesiveness that is necessary for an offensive line to flourish. DQ talked about Jaden's performance, and he said he was encouraged, as was I. And I think most of you felt that way, and I got that sense from you yesterday talking to you all, that you were encouraged by what you saw from Jaden. And I think I doubled down on that assessment after watching. There were things he could have done that could have helped the team out a little bit more. Obviously, hit the deep ball to Terry, and DQ, stressed that again. Like, gotta hit that, right? But there, by and large, he was really good in the game, made smart decisions. And the thing I love is that as a young quarterback, you're gonna take a while to figure things out. But while you're figuring out, don't turn it over. And he seems like a guy that's gonna do. He had to fumble, and I didn't like that. But he had no idea that guy was coming. But his first inclination is to escape the pocket backwards, right? Rarely does he step up into the pocket and elude the rush by running through the A gap, right? A lot of times when he sees pressure, his first inclination is to bail backwards and out leverage, because he's so fast and athletic. There's not many guys that are going to be able to stop him from turning that corner. So he's so used to running backwards to go forwards that I'm afraid that we're going to see a lot of those guys looping around, that the tackle does a good job of pushing up the field and keeping the integrity of the pocket. But because Jaden wants to get out the pocket and extend the play by running backwards, he's going to run right into a guy coming backside. He's not going to see him, and that guy's going to hit his arm. The ball's going to come out like it did on that play, and you're going to have some potential turnover opportunities like that. So that's something to watch for, because I noticed that a lot of his escapes from the pocket were backwards. And you don't think teams are going to see that on tape and understand it. Hey, just keep rushing this guy. Keep going around. He's going to run into you, and you're going to have an opportunity to get to him. So I think that's something else that they got to try to correct. But when you look at his performance overall, I thought he gave us a shot, man. With his legs, with the decision-making. I watched some young quarterbacks yesterday struggle in the decision-making portion of the game. Bo Nix threw 2 picks, and that hurt his team, immensely, right? Like, you can't have those types of mistakes and expect to win on the road in a tough environment. And they didn't against the Seahawks. And they only lost by 6 points. And you could argue those 2 interceptions were the difference in the game. And so when you don't turn it over, you give yourself a chance. And I thought he gave us a chance, but we just didn't take advantage of opportunities. We made too many mistakes, so forth and so forth. But I was encouraged by what I saw. They asked him about Jaden's 16 carries. Is that too much? The media, I think they want to coddle him like he's some kind of toddler or something. Like, he's not 8 years old. He's not your kid. You don't need to worry about if he's going to get hurt because he's got too many carries. Is 16 a lot? Sure it is. They didn't call 16 runs, though, okay? It's one thing if there were 11 design runs and then 5 dropbacks that he took off on. Okay, that's a bit excessive. A lot of those were Jaden saying, you know what? I don't like what I'm seeing. There's instant pressure. I got to get out of here and make something happen. That's a part of the game. That's a part of his game. Like, come off of it already. Stop complaining about how many carries. Stop complaining about his helmet not being on tight enough. Like, worry about real shit. That's the way I see that, right? But that's just me. Anyway, he said the 16 was a bit much, but look, it is what it is. Like, he said one thing they got to do away with is the quarterback power shit up the middle. Nobody wants to see that. I don't want to see that anymore. You don't want to see that anymore. A lot of you are like, look, I don't need to see that again. None of us want to see that. You know, if you're going to run him, he needs to be on the perimeter. I don't want to see him where out of bounds is an option or getting down, running in the middle of the field. Unless, again, only time I want to see quarterback draw is when you're in the red zone, you spread them out, and that's when quarterback draw is an option and a damn good one. I don't want to see that shit from your own 37-yard line on 3rd and 6, like we ran it, you know, and I think he got like 2 or 3 yards. It wasn't 3rd down, though. I think it was 2nd down. I don't want to see that shit anymore. And DQ was like, yeah, we don't need to see that. He talked about him not taking, you know, those sacks and those, you know, lost yardage plays when we're almost in scoring range or in scoring range, which he had one of those in the game. The fumble came in that type of situation. Again, you know, learning, you know, teaching tool. That's Tell the Truth Monday. That's one of the clips you show and say, hey, we can't have that, right? So again, he'll learn, he'll get better from that. And it was an opportunity for him to get rid of the football too in that situation. But he talked about, you know, the defense needing to be better. You know, he talked about Benjamin St. Juste knowing the mistakes that he made, and you know, that's half the battle, is knowing what you did wrong and then being able to go out and self-correct. He also gave credit, which I did as well. I think a lot of people did yesterday too, and I was glad to see that. The Bucs are a good team. You know, Mike Evans is one of the best receivers in football. Chris Godwin is one of the better slot receivers in football. Baker Mayfield is a good quarterback, and they were all in sync. They played well, and they were a well-oiled machine yesterday. And you have to give credit where credit is due. And so I know it's easy to rail on Benjamin St. Juste. He was in good coverage. He was where he needed to be. He just didn't make a play on the ball. And again, that's the limitation of Benjamin St. Juste. That's who he's always been. You can't expect it to just change all of a sudden. That's who he is. You know, he talked about DQ did why they moved on from Cade York. And he said, we're always going to look to get better and to get after it, you know, and that goes across the board. We're not going to stop trying to improve this team. And, you know, he said it wasn't good enough. The kicking game wasn't good enough yesterday. You know, the 2 misses. And then I think he was like me. That kick off out of bounds that shit got me hot under the collar. I was pissed because it's bad enough that the touchback already is out to the 30. That's bullshit. Okay, as is. But both teams get that luxury, right? Both teams get the ball out to the 30. So you can not like it, but both teams have the ability to take a touchback if the ball's kicked in the end zone and start at the 30. What you don't have is the ball at the 40, okay? That's not something that's supposed to happen. That is a mistake. That is a penalty, and that is stupid. And it's an unforced error, and it can't happen. And so I think that pissed him off just as much as it pissed me off. And he was like, yeah, no, we can't have this shit. And furthermore, I talked about this on the Bleacher Report. Like, we're just not a good enough team to be able to have those types of mistakes in those situations and expect to win. We're going to win close games this year. I don't see us beating up teams and blowing teams out. We might have 1 or 2 this year where we get a hold of a team and we create a turnover or 2, and we are to, you know, get some explosives, and you hit the deep ball to Terry. Jaden, escapes and takes off and scores a 46-yard touchdown run, or, you know, you dump it down to, you know, Eckler on a screen, and we get some blocks, and he, you know, takes off, and it's a 56-yard touchdown on a screen. Like, we might have a game where everything kind of falls in place for us, but you know, for the most part, if we win games, it's going to be by 2. It's going to be by 3. It's going to be by 4. You know, it's going to be, you're clinging to a lead late and you got to get a defensive stop, or you go down the field and you got to make a field goal late. And if you got a kicker like Cade York, you ain't winning shit having him in that situation. So now we're back to the drawing board. They're going to bring in some kickers tomorrow to try out, and they're going to sign the one they like the most. And I expect that transaction to take place tomorrow at some point. So, yeah, he talked about that whole situation and the decision-making process going into that. And he said that he was encouraged by a lot of the things he saw, but they have to establish their identity. We have to set the foundation. He's like, and we didn't do that yesterday. And we're not going to stop until we establish who we are. And he said, and this was the thing that I loved about DQ. He said, I talked about doing hard shit with good people. And he said, I wasn't talking about training camp or OTAs or the off season. He's like, I was talking about days like yesterday, and I'm talking about right now. Like when you're tired in the fourth quarter in Tampa, when it's 95 degrees outside in the first game of the season, and you're dog tired, that's when I'm talking about doing hard shit with good people. That's when I need you to dig down deep and give me everything you got and find a way to get it done. That's what I'm talking about, hard shit. That's when hard shit kicks in. And he was like, we didn't get it done, And he said, we have to build up that callus. We got to become that team. And until we do, we're going to continue to fight to get there. And if that means cutting a kicker because he didn't get it done, making changes within the lineup, we're going to do that. We're going to keep fighting. We're never going to stop fighting to become the best versions of ourselves and set that identity and that culture that we're trying to, create here. And so I love it. And I told you they're going to take accountability. And he talked about some of the personnel issues. He's like, yeah, that's on us. We'll get better. That was everybody's first game. And I'm not making any excuses because we felt like we were prepared. We felt like we were prepared. And we didn't get it done. So I feel good. I feel good. I hated, seeing us perform that way because bottom line is, tell the truth Monday, we sucked yesterday. We sucked collectively as a team yesterday. Everybody had their hand in that shit. Nobody was absolved of wrongdoing yesterday. From the staff to the players, everybody had their hand. Special teams, offense, defense, everybody had a hand in that 17-point defeat yesterday. But we get to do it again on Sunday in front of the home crowd. And I think that they're going to continue to get better. And I told you, we're going to see those improvements on a weekly basis. So we're starting at the bottom, right? We're starting at the bottom. And we should see incremental growth and improvement week after week after week until we get to a point where we say, all right, we're ready to compete. And you know what I'm really excited about? I'm so glad that unlike the last 2 years where we had the Eagles early in the season, right? Last year, we were done with the Eagles by week 8. And 2 years ago, we had the Eagles in week 3 and the Cowboys in week 4, right? So glad we don't play those teams because we're not ready for those teams yet. By the time we see the Eagles for the first time this season, week 7, we'll be ready. We'll be ready by then. We're not ready for the Eagles or the Cowboys right now. So I'm so glad we don't play them yet. Give us time to get our shit together, and then we'll be able to compete with those teams because we're not getting swept by the entire division this season, and we're not being swept by both the Eagles and the Cowboys. One of them may sweep us, but the goal is to beat everybody in this division at least once. And I think we'll be prepared by the time we see those guys later on in the season. But I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T here on Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you. If you are an NFL fan, I'll be back later on tonight for Monday Night Football overtime, Jets, 49ers. But if you're just a Commanders fan and you don't care about anybody else, I'll be back tomorrow for Commanders Nightly News again. So until then, have a good one. Take care. Make sure you watch the Bleacher Report video because I went into greater detail in that video as to some of the things that I saw. If you're a member of the MOBB, I see a lot of you asking me, are we going to do the film breakdowns? Of course, that's a part of your mob package. Yes, we're going to do the breakdowns. And so we will do that tomorrow night. That's a Tuesday thing, right? Tuesday night thing. So we'll be doing that tomorrow night. If we can squeeze it in, we won't be able to squeeze it in tomorrow afternoon because I have a podcast episode to do tomorrow afternoon. But We'll squeeze. That's usually going to be a Tuesday night thing, but we'll see what happens. But it'll be tomorrow night. As far as moving forward, if I can squeeze it in, because normally the podcast will be Mondays, not Tuesdays, but I want to watch Caleb Williams' game. I haven't seen it yet, and I want to really dive into that and see what the hell he did before I talk about it on my podcast. So I'm going to push the podcast to Tuesday this week. So anyway, I digress. You guys get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good one. Take care. Raise hell.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone.